Shawavuma, Dabu Nigwakumbawo. Ginom Abo Shawavuma, Dabu Nigwakumbawo.
Ginom Abo Shawavuma, Dabu Nigwakumbawo. Ginom Abo Shawavuma, Dabu Nigwakumbawo. Ginom Abo Shawavuma, Dabu Nigwakumbawo. Ginom Abo Shawavuma, Dabu Nigwakumbawo. Ginom Abo Shawavuma, Dabu Nigwakumbawo. Ginom Abo Shawavuma, Dabu Nigwakumbawo.
Your dad and I were taking what was one of a regular series of inspection flights through Africa as part of the air traffic control program of which he was the leader. This particular journey involved, as I remember, a couple of incidents. Stops at Soroti, where there was an East African flying training school, but we had to fly through Entebbe for some reason.
Had to clear customs.
And clear customs.
Immigration, all that sort of stuff.
I believe Justice Kimwelly was with us at the time. July 74, which was nearly 2 years after the immigration operation in Kampala, but there was still a certain amount of alertness on the part of the military because they were always somewhat fearful of a potential invasion from the south, led by the previous and ousted President Obote. Milton Obote.
Milton Obote.
On this particular trip, we flew from Entebbe to Soroti, and as we were flying over something called the Finger Lakes, we encountered the first mystery of the tour, in that we saw a low-wing white monoplane in shallow water.
Under the water.
That no one seemed to have record of. But mysteriously,
Couldn't find it.
no reference to it as a crash site or any reference to any aircraft being missing or whatever. So it could, I've speculated in later years, be an unauthorized flight as part of the Congo Gold scandal. In other words, a smuggling operation. Because the only thing that would attract somebody to fly illegally would be a high-value, low-volume cargo. So I thought perhaps somebody was trying to get gold in and out of somewhere. And the only gold in that area is the Simba Rebellion and Oriental province. I figured after a while it was best to let sleeping dogs lie. Anyway, we went to Soroti, where the project leader was a Canadian, and flew back. And this is where things began to get interesting, because at that point we were landing at Entebbe, and we'd made arrangements to meet Justice there. He wasn't with us on the flight to Soroti.
And a friend of his, or another Kenyan acquaintance that we were going to take back to Kenya.
That's right. So we had two passengers.
What kind of aircraft?
Cherokee 235.
Okay,
Blue in color. And a Lufthansa crew subsequently put it in and Lake Rudolph.
yeah.
Anyway, we were getting ready to go. I guess we'd flown back from Soroti earlier in the day, and we were to meet Justice, and the Kenyan pilot, the Kenyan person had come back with us from Soroti. So there was some business to transact at the tower at Entebbe, which I wasn't a part of, this being the sacred inner secret of the air traffic control training program as administered by your dad and Justice. So the two of them went and descended upon the tower while I waited. I think Justice came with you and the other Kenyan. So I waited by the aircraft, which was parked out on the tarmac in front of the air terminal at Entebbe, the new one built by Energo Project, the Yugoslav contract firm. Parked beside the Cherokee, that was our transport, was a very nice Gulfstream.
Gulfstream 2.
A Gulfstream 2. And the Gulfstream 2 was not an aircraft that I had been near to up until that time. And I found various aspects of its construction interesting, including the way the nose wheel tended to sort of fold in upon itself as it retreated inside the fuselage after takeoff. And a couple of other things. So as I was noodling around waiting for your dad and the rest of the group to come, I looked at the aircraft. However, I had not noticed a group of about 4, maybe 5 soldiers sleeping in the shade of the aircraft terminal building opposite this Gulfstream 2. What I did notice was, after I'd been looking around at this aircraft for about 15-20 minutes, there was a shout from the shade of the terminal in which one of these soldiers was saying, "Hey, what you do?" I lifted my hands in innocence and said, "Nothing." And then I noticed the soldiers coming up from the ground and approaching me with some concern registered on their faces. I immediately became concerned myself, as one must under these circumstances. The senior soldier, a sergeant I think, looked at me with some accusation, which worried me because I, so far as I could tell, had done nothing evil. "Are you saboteur?" I said, "No." "Are you spy?" "No." "Are you saboteur?" He went through various labels, and as they began to repeat, I began to suspect that he may not be listening. So I interjected and said, "Do you know what a diplomat is?" "Diplomat?" He looked puzzled. Okay, I thought it's time to escalate things a little bit. "Do you know what an ambassador is?" "Oh yes, no ambassador." I said, "Well, I'm an ambassador, ambassadors are not spies. It speaks for itself, only in a highly official circumstance. Oh, you're ambassador? And he said, show me. So I pulled out my passport, which was red, diplomatic, opened it to show my face, and I said, see, this is my picture. Handed it to the guy. He looked at the picture, turned a couple of pages, and as he was scrutinizing this with great care, he very slowly turned it upside down, which led me to question the quality of his reading knowledge. And in the meantime, your dad, Justice, and the third passenger came along, returning from their review session in the control tower. And I said, well, gentlemen, I've done nothing wrong. My driver is here, driver being friend Larry. I must go. Oh, you a spy? No. Saboteur? No, I am an ambassador. This is my carriage. This is my pilot. These are my other passengers. I must go now. Are you a spy? I said, look, I have had beer with Idi Amin, your general, last night, and if you do not wish to let me go, I must phone him and give you trouble.
So was that part true?
Yep. Well, I'm not sure if I'd had beer with him the night before, but I knew Idi, and because Idi and I are in about the same altitude, as it were, from the ground position, he always knew me and recognized me, so I was quite sure that if I phoned State House, I would manage to get somebody to pay attention. Okay, said the sergeant. Go now. And this was after some palavering. You remember the final instruction that we could go. So we got in the plane, and your dad made a very hasty pre-flight inspection, fired the engine up with great speed, and we got into the airplane, and we went at a very fast taxiing speed to the end of the runway. However, there was an Alitalia flight that was just departing before we left. And Larry was jumping from one leg to the other because we had to wait some 1 or 2 minutes for the turbulence to settle from this jet takeoff before we could inflict ourselves on the runway and the air. So, jiggling from one foot to the next, in a very artistic and purposeful way, he waited the, 1.5 minutes, Larry? Put the throttle to the firewall, finest pitch he'd ever used, and the airplane took off like a goose baboon. Amazing speed, up in the air very quickly. He kept the nose down in order to build speed, as I remember, and we were out of Entebbe and across Lake Victoria in a flash. And
We stayed low below the radar.
And when we were abeam Jinja, there was a call upon the radio in which Entebbe Tower was asking, please report your position. This caused a certain amount of concern on our part, and Larry then decided to report that we were overhead Kisumu, which is Kenyan territory, and beyond, of course, the powers of the Entebbe Tower. This would have entailed an absolute speed, somewhat in excess of the speed which the 235 permitted. Barely subsonic, I think.
Right.
And we talked about this in low and hushed tones for a few minutes, and then continued on our journey to Wilson Airfield. Now, I did hear that you learned from Justice Kimwelly that after our departure, about the time that the Entebbe Tower contacted us, the colonel in charge of security at the airport had returned from lunch and was told by the soldiers, who were now alert and not napping, that these crazy white guys had been there and looking at the airplane. and said colonel went to the control tower to ask about these evildoers and to demand their return, which explained the call that we had and our amazing journey through space and time to the overhead at Kisumu.
The soldiers had killed a Tanzanian on the airport the day before. And also that Kimweli and his counterpart, the Kenyan, were very fearful because they believed that they would have been shot. If we had all been taken in, they would have not left the country. You and I may have been beat up, whatever, but I don't think we would have been killed, but the other two certainly would have been probably dumped in Lake Victoria. Yeah.
Well, Justice Kimweli was a fairly senior official within the East African community. But previous to that time, during some of the periods of tension with Tanzania, because Obote, the previous dictator, had taken refuge with Julius Nyerere.
Oh, yes.
There were half a dozen Tanzanian prospective employees of the East African community that went to Kampala for job interviews and were never seen again.
The city of Kampala was experiencing some power reductions.
Oh, yeah.
And upon investigation, they found that the water pipes to the hydroelectric dam on the north end of Lake Victoria was plugged with bodies that the army had been throwing in Lake Victoria.
Yeah, the Jinja barracks had a particularly unfortunate reputation at the time. Their means of execution were very brutal. What they used to do was line the prisoners up in a row, and 10, 20, 30 at a time, hand the second one in the row a sledgehammer and say, with a gun pointed at him, "You will bash the head in of the man ahead of you."
My gosh.
He would do that, and then the third man in line would be told to pick up the hammer.
Oh boy.
And by the time they got to the end of the line, the last guy would get a bullet. The number of people that died, the brutality of their deaths, and the effect which it had on Uganda is almost impossible to assess. You can still see scars of that period in Uganda today.
Bahleli bonke etilongweni, bahleli bonke kwano. Bahleli bonke etilongweni, bahleli bonke kwano. Bahleli bonke etilongweni, bahleli bonke kwano. Hi halala. Halala, halala. Nangu sobukwe, nangu etilongweni. Nangu sobukwe, nangu etilongweni. Ini bawa lutuli. Zote, ini bawa lutuli. Zote. Nangu Mandela. Nangu etilongweni. Nangu Sisulu. Nangu etilongweni. Ini wema Afrika. Soteni, ini wema Afrika. Soteni. Bahleli bonke etilongweni, bahleli bonke kwano. Bahleli bonke etilongweni. Tilongweni, Bahleli bonke kwanongqongqo. Sisi wa mbalimbali, nyumbani kwetu ni mbali sana, katika mziki twaungana, haya changanika changanika. Sisi wa mbalimbali, nyumbani kwetu ni mbali sana, katika mziki twaungana, haya changanika changanika. Changanika changanika, haya changanika he he, haya changanika hi hi, haya changanika twaimba changanika. Changanika changanika changanika, haya changanika he he, haya changanika hi hi, haya changanika twaimba changanika. Sisi wa mbalimbali, nyumbani kwetu ni mbali sana, katika mziki twaungana, haya changanika changanika. Sisi wa mbalimbali, nyumbani kwetu ni mbali sana, katika mziki twaungana, haya changanika changanika. Changanika changanika changanika, haya changanika he he, haya changanika hi hi, haya changanika twaimba changanika. Changanika changanika, haya changanika he he, haya changanika hi hi, haya changanika twaimba changanika.